Good morning, everybody. Shane McCusker here, Intelligence Software. Welcome to our webinar. Today we're talking about social recruiting, talent pools, and social media marketing. So this is a hot topic and has been for quite some time. And it's all about community, and it's the essence of social media is really what we're talking about today. We're looking at community, what it is, and what you can do with it. My thought process on this is I've said it before, I'll no doubt say it many times again, is that social media is about throwing a party. It's throwing a party and inviting people, and hopefully they'll come along. And within a community, the way that you want to engage and react to it is exactly as it would do at a party situation. If you go to a party, you don't go immediately shaking hands with people and saying, I've got vacancies, do you want to work for me? No, well, you could do if you wanted to, but you may not be asked back again. You engage people, talk about what they're interested in. You talk about what you're interested in. They know who you are, you know who they are, and if opportunities present themselves out of that, then there's no problem taking advantage of it. So it's the whole notion of social media marketing particularly, and also social recruiting to another extent, is about trying to be social. And that is the fundamental of it all. In terms of what you can get out of it, there are different things that you may want to look at. From a social recruiting point of view, a lot of people look at it. Initially, you start off saying, okay, I want to source candidates. I want to find people that I can then headhunt or approach for a job or whatever. And that's certainly the position most people start off. They start off searching LinkedIn. And then if you follow some of our other webinars, we showed you clever Boolean techniques about finding people. Finding people is the first part of it, but whenever you start talking about community and social, then you really want to talk about engagement and looking at ways that you can be part of the party rather than watching who's walking in and out of the building, and that's a different skill and a different technique, and there are different tools in which you may want to consider using it. But if you just think about it as being a party, you won't go far wrong. If you think about it as being conventional recruitment, just within a slightly different environment, within a virtual environment, that's also very acceptable an analogy, and you will not go far wrong with that. So that's really where we are with it. With regard to what you can do, the different aspects of it, my interest in social media marketing, because for those who haven't realized, I'm not a recruiter. I sell software to recruitment companies. So the recruitment industry is my customer base. And although I talk about recruitment all the time, which is because software tries to help make more placements, I need to be up to speed on the technology to be able to facilitate that. What we're actually interested in doing is creating a community of people that may or may not have an interest in what we do. If I'm at a party and people know who I am, Shane McCusker, Intelligence Software, does recruitment software, brilliant, you can talk to me about anything you like, but if you're interested in recruitment software, hopefully somebody will say, Shane, good man to see you, I'm looking for some software, can you help me out? And that's as much as that I'm hoping to achieve out of my social media marketing strategy. What also happens, however, is whenever you engage with communities and be social, you can also present yourself as a voice of authority. And this is really important. Again, if you're a recruiter and you are engaging in a community of, say you're an IT recruiter, which is where sort of a lot of the social stuff started. If you engage with communities of IT people, which are all over the internet, talking about particular software applications or contracting, whatever it happens to be, if you engage in that conversation and can talk intelligently within that conversation, then you're setting yourself out as somebody who has good knowledge of the industry, and it is presenting yourself as an expert. And at this stage, there's still relatively few expert voices out on the internet in all sorts of different fields, and it's not that difficult to create yourself into a little bit of an internet celebrity. I use celebrity in the vaguest of terms, although celebrity nowadays is used in the vaguest of terms. If you think of the people that call themselves celebrities, you want to be there and present yourself, and to enable others to see you as being somebody who is worth talking to. And that's a completely different way you can imagine if you're involved in a cold call type situation where you get cold calls and the person on the end of the phone is almost apologetic for ringing you up and taking up your time. That is a person who's on the back foot to begin with and doesn't have any authority within a conversation. If you present yourself as an expert in your field, whatever your field happens to be, then you've got confidence and you're taking control, and people will respect you much more for that and hopefully give you more business and certainly be able to your position as a consultant within the recruitment industry. Okay, I'm going to talk about some examples of really interesting campaigns that I've seen, and it's all very well talking about the theory, but I'm going to boil it down to the nitty-gritty of stuff that we've seen working and stuff that goes. I'm going to start talking about my own experience first of all, which is to do with LinkedIn and the community building stuff that I've done on LinkedIn. There are two groups on LinkedIn that I have a particular interest in: the South African Recruiters Group and the Irish Recruiters Group, and it makes a lot of sense to say I sell recruitment software, so these are two communities of potential customers for me. Not only potential customers, but groups of people that are interested in that field. So to be perfectly honest, I get more from a point of view of keeping my finger on the pulse as to what's going on within the recruitment industry, understanding what trends are happening. I'm actually learning an awful lot out of this. I'm getting an awful lot of ideas, and I'm sharing a lot of ideas. So obviously this webinar tends to be in one direction where I'm creating content, but I'll get an awful lot of feedback from this. And so the conversation is in two directions. And if anybody wants to put up questions or answers or comments throughout the webinar, please do so, and we'll try and create a bit more of a two-way thing going on here. Now, one fascinating thing about these two groups is, and to some extent I value them equally and differently, is that in one instance, the South African Recruiters Group, I set it up and I'm the manager of it. In the Irish Recruiters Group, I didn't set it up. I'm not the manager. The guy who set it up is a guy called Declan Fitzgerald, who up until recently worked for LinkedIn. And he set it up just as the groups was launched on LinkedIn. And he set that up. And both groups are about approximately the same sort of size and numbers, although the South African Recruiters Group's been going for about a year. And both of them are very active groups within the sphere of recruitment. And this is one of the things that, I'll talk later on about how you set up a group, but, you don't have to. I would hope to be as influential, and arguably I'm as influential in one as the other, which may not be massively influential, but it's probably on a par, because all you have to do is engage and be social. If I throw up a party in my house, I may not be the most entertaining, interesting person that attends the party. Somebody else might be more interesting than me. It just happens to be my house. So just because it's somebody else's community, somebody else's party, doesn't mean you cannot be the most interesting and social person that's there. It's difficult to be social on your own, so you need other people there to do it. With regards to the marketing campaign that we did, which set up the South African Recruiters Group, it worked in South Africa, and I wanted to duplicate the process in Ireland, but there was already a group there, so there was no need for me to set up another group. All I did was engage with and participate in. I mean, it's no rocket science. I just got on the board and tweeted it. Both groups are very active in terms of doing other stuff, which is the physical meetup stuff. So I started organizing physical events for the Irish Recruiters Group. Some people may be on the line here who were attending last night's meeting, and we had about 25 people turned up to it, and we had speakers, and we had a brilliant debate on a range of recruiting topics. The other group I've thrown in there is Cool Free Recruiting Tools. Now, this is a group set up by a guy called Martin Lee, who I know quite well as well. A great group to join if any of you are interested in getting inside information on sourcing and tips on issues relating to social recruiting. Martin is a sourcer, and he's a brilliant sourcer and a recruiter. Very, very technically competent. He does all sorts of very cool stuff. And one of the things I love about his group is that whenever you set up a LinkedIn group, you can't really, it's very difficult to promote it. It's very difficult to differentiate yourself. It's just a group, because all people really see is the title of the group. And as you can see, Martin's title is quite unusual. It started off when he formed the group being called Tools for Recruiting. And very soon he was wondering, how am I going to increase the numbers here? So he changed the name. He said Cool Tools for Recruiting. And as soon as he did that, then the numbers went up even more. In terms of the number of people that saw it, and thought, yeah, I want to join that group because it sounds cool tools. And then he put in the word free, and the numbers went through the roof. And that was his simple strategy. He was just playing around with the names of the group to see which was going to create a better reaction. So it was a wonderful example of when the name of a group really makes a difference. Okay, that's LinkedIn. I'm going to show you another thing. This is Martin again, Martin Lee, Cool Free Recruiting Tools. He's a recruiter, and he set this up. Hopefully you can see that, okay? This is a Facebook slide, and this is a Facebook page that he set up. Now, let me tell you the story. He was asked to do some recruitment for, I think it was a call center, and the target market that he was looking for were sort of 30-something, 40-something females. And within the UK, you can't put an ad in a newspaper saying I'm looking for middle-aged ladies or whatever it is, 30, 40-year-old ladies. Terribly sorry, people don't consider themselves middle-aged to 30. So what did he do? Well, there was a nightclub in Northampton called Ritzy's. I think Cinderella was the club or something like that. And he set up this page called Memories of Ritzy's. And what happened was that he encouraged people to come along and share stories about Ritzy's. Ritzy's had long since closed. But he got loads of people engaging with it, talking about all the different nights that they had there and the people that were there. You can see it there. It says, I'm proud I once went there 7 nights in a row, but only whatever the story is. Go onto the wall of this and you'll see all sorts of interesting stories about people they met. Go onto the photos page and see all sorts of photos about Ritzy's. Now, sorry, I'm going to come back to my point. You'll recall Martin's recruitment campaign where he wanted to create a pool of people that he can engage with. Most of the people that got involved in this turned out to be 30, 40-something-year-old women and in Northampton. So he created a pool of people, a community of people that had a common interest and that he engaged with, and he got friendly with them and he spoke to them, and you know, sooner or later somebody said, what's your interest in this? Why did you set this up? He said, well, I'm doing some recruitment for a call center and we thought we'd create a community. So it was a wonderfully indirect way of creating a community. I've seen a few other examples of this. There was another great Facebook page, I think it was called Accountants Are Cool, and what it was asking accountants to post photographs of accountants doing cool things. And it got flooded with stuff. It became viral. Lots of people got involved in it, engaged with it. And what it effectively did was create a community of accountants. Now, it doesn't take a genius to think, well, there's a community of accountants that I don't have other ways of accessing. Accountants tend not to be on LinkedIn, by the way. There are plenty of them there, but there are even more of them that are not. And it was a way to create a community of people that had a shared interest, and in that instance about accountancy. I was talking to another lady. There's no relationship to recruitment at all, but it gives another idea. She was a hairdresser. She ran a hairdressing salon, and she wanted to try. She ran a competition on Facebook. She said, "Give your bad hair day stories." People who had bad haircuts, whatever else, and then she asked people to get their friends to vote on who had the best story, and the person that got the best story won a year's free hairdressing. And it was brilliant. The winners of that were getting 200 and 300 likes to their stories, which meant that, you know, when somebody went onto her Facebook page to like a friend's story, they also read other people's stories, but they also saw her branding and engaged with it and saw posts that she was putting up, and it created a massive following to her Facebook page. So it was a really interesting way to do a competition based on Facebook, creating a viral effect to encourage people to create in a community. Okay, what else? Yes, Ning. Now, this is those Facebook and LinkedIn and these things are sort of like social recruiting sites, but there are other ways of creating communities, and Ning is one of them. Ning is a sort of a foundation that you can build a website on, and a website that has members and forums and blogs and whatever you want to put into it. And one of the biggest ones that I know of is recruiting blogs. This was started by Jason Davis in Canada. Jason, actually, he's one of the few people I know that actually managed to create a community and then make money out of it, because he sold recruiting blogs earlier on in the year. I think he got something like $50,000 for it or something like that there. I may be completely wrong, but it was of that order of magnitude. And there's hundreds of thousands of people that are regular participants in it. I certainly post a lot of my blog content up there, or have done in the past. And it's a really good way to share things. It's a little bit US-centric, but there's a lot of people engaging it from all around the world, including South Africa. And it was just a really interesting thing. But whenever you go onto the site, you wouldn't know it's a Ning network, because it's recruitingblogs.com and it's just set up on Ning, but Ning provides the architecture. So you can go in very easily and set up internet communities on that and invite people to it. I know this because there's a charity organization called the Ladies Lunch Club, which I was involved in. You can see my little ugly icon sitting there. And this was a simple little charity event thing that we set up, again, off a Ning network. What we wanted to do was doing a charity thing, and we wanted to create a community so that every year when we ran it, we didn't have to go back and start from scratch in terms of building up a community. We wanted to form a community that sat there that we could sell charity tickets to, and then we encouraged other charities to also engage with it, so they created content for the network. So it was quite an interesting way of doing it. Check out ning.com and set up your own social communities. Okay, communities don't just stop on the internet. You see, the thing is that communities have been going for ages. You know, I mean, how many people traditionally join golf clubs to meet people there? And if you're in a golf club, it's very social, and you can hang out and headhunt people and schmooze if you want to do that sort of thing. So think about all the communities and the way they work, because more and more communities, even if it's a physical community, tends to have a virtual side to it. And there was, I'm just going to flag up, these are some of the things in around Belfast that I've been doing. BizCamp, brilliant thing. What it was a user-generated conference. And they put a website up saying, right, we're having a conference. Started off with a techie thing. It's an unconference. So basically you signed up and said, right, I want to attend this conference. It was free. And I want to talk about social recruiting, or I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And they put a board up, say, okay, here are our rooms, here are our tracks. They took over one of the larger museums in Belfast, the Ulster Museum, for a day. The museum was closed, and they took it over and filled it with 300 or 400 people. But because of that, it was founded on a technology platform. Meant that you can actually find out who those people are, because everybody who attends it registers, and their registration is on a website. So you can go along to the event, you know who's going to be there, and you can interact with them and meet them. And you know in that instance there was a whole lot of techie people, a whole lot of IT people, but a whole lot of marketing people as well, and media people. So if you were recruiting in those spheres, that's the place you want to be. But you don't need to be at the event physically, because of the fact that they've got a virtual presence, and you can see who they are online. Whenever they register, they put a Twitter name, they put an email address. There was another event called Refresh in Belfast, and it was again a massive techie design orientated thing, and they had bi-monthly meetings where they'd take over a big venue, take a few hundred people, and have a speaker talking about something of interest to that community. But they were big into Twitter, and whenever an event happened, you just followed the Refresh Belfast hashtag, and suddenly you get 50 or 60 people tweeting. And when you look at who those people are, they all turn out to be web developers, designers, community. So all I had to do when I was recruiting a PHP person was I said, I'm looking for a PHP person, #Refresh Belfast. And it went out also to all the people that were following that hashtag. And we got a stream of people coming in interested in finding out more. But also, because of the fact I knew who the people were, I could be really targeted, because I'd go in and say, right, who's tweeting on that? Look at the people, look at the profile. Because they're all web-oriented people, they had a big web presence, and it was very easy to suss out people that I was interested in talking to, and I'd just directly contact them through Twitter. Okay, what else have I got there? Yeah. Let's move on then, and we'll talk about this notion of, do you start a community or join a community? My general feeling on this has been, up until last night, to join a community that already exists. There is minimal benefit in starting your own community. If there's one there that already does what you want to do, then join that and be social and take part in it. As long as the rules within that community aren't restricting you in some way, shape or form, which they may do, but it's about going along to somebody else's party, and you've got to play by the rules and be polite and not be a rude party guest. So that's, you know, I mean, if there's a community there, join it, as I did with the Irish Recruiters Group. And because I participated in it, because I was interested in community building and things, then I was able to say, right, I'm going to promote this a bit, and engaged an extra few hundred people to get involved in the community. So it was to everybody's benefit. That said, there's one thing that isn't on this slideshow, because I did this slideshow earlier yesterday, and I found out last night that LinkedIn is bringing out analytical tools for group managers. I have no idea what those are yet, but that could be a reason that it is beneficial to be a group manager. But at this moment in time, really being a group manager is an extra bit of work, and if you don't have to do it, then I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, if you do decide you want to create a community, and you know, I mean, there's not that many South African groups, for example. So if you're involved in a sector of recruitment that is quite niche, say, I don't know, you can think of your own niche sectors if you want to. Think of the work that you go into. Have a look and see if there's groups there and community stuff there. There probably will be, but if there isn't, you may want to think about creating your own. So how do you go down the route of starting a group? and I'm going to talk about specifically about LinkedIn. First of all, you've got to decide what sort of group it should be. There's all sorts of different groups out there. Check out the types of groups that are floating around. My thought on this generally is that you have to have a group that is interesting enough for people to want to join, in the sense that, I get a lot of invites to ABC Recruitment has just started a group, and it's called ABC Recruitment, and I'm not entirely sure why I would want to join ABC Recruitment. I was talking to a recruiter last night, actually, who runs two groups. One is for their recruitment company and one is for the IT community. And it was quite interesting to hear how they use the company group really to post information and jobs and try and create a sort of an information forum. But I suspect, and I haven't checked this out, there isn't an awful lot of interaction on there. But the other one, which is the IT group, obviously it's a case where you just throw the party and then IT people turn up and talk about IT things and techie things. So one of the things I think it should be is that, if you're interested in the community, I wasn't going to set up intelligence software as a group. I set up South African Recruiters Group because I wanted South African recruiters to get involved in the group. I didn't necessarily want my customer base to be involved in it. So think about your company, think about the industry, think about disciplines, fairly obvious things. Think about twists on it. If you think about Ritzies, memories of Ritzies, you can see how off the wall you can be in terms of being discreet about the type of group you want to form. Okay, what to call it and what profile. Every group on LinkedIn has a profile. I'm not entirely sure how many people read that, particularly nowadays that LinkedIn is creating open groups. Whenever you actually view the group, it takes you straight to the discussion page rather than the group profile page. So you actually have to click on more group profile to see what the profile is actually about. The one thing, though, that everybody does see is the name of the group, and that tends to be, whenever you're searching for groups or looking for groups or seeing groups on other people's profiles, which is where I tend to pick up group names from, it's the name of the group that's all important, and it should be succinct enough to tell you what the group's about. And it is very important, as you saw with Martin's example of cool free recruiting tools, how important it can be. Okay, one thing you can do as a manager of a group is you can control the door policy. You can let people in. You can also throw people out. You can also moderate what they say. You can set the ground rules for it. So you can say, okay, the rules are going to be, we're going to talk about this, but we're not going to talk about something else. And so in South African Recruiters Group, for example, we get an awful lot of applications. It's a big group, but it could be 5 times the size if everybody was let in. We actually don't let in about 80% of the applicants because they tend not to be South African recruiters. They tend to be job hunters or people that are overseas. And I'm not entirely sure the motivation for wanting to join. We do now ask whenever anybody wants to join the group, they get an email saying, if it's not obvious from your profile that you're a South African recruiter, please write to me and let me know why you want to join. And if I get an email giving me a good reason that they get in, and if they don't look like on their profile they're a South African recruiter, then they probably don't get in. So that's part of the thing. The other thing is that you've got to be aware how people want to use groups, and a lot of people don't understand this notion of wanting to be social. People look at it as an advertising channel, which it absolutely is not. So one of the things you can do as the manager for a group is you can delete people or you can delete comments. But I'm very wary of doing that because I did it once when the group started and immediately I had a backlash of people saying, I was interested in that comment. Why did you delete that? That was a fair thing. I said, but it's obviously blatantly promoting their own business. But people were interested in that because it was appropriate and applicable at the time. So now what we do, we have a policy, or generally when we can do, if it's not very obviously spam, if it's something that's a little bit marginal, we'll just write to them and say, listen, you put a post up, we want you to be interesting, that's a bit promotional, could you put another post up that's a bit more discussional? And the rules and all we have just, it says, if you're going to put on a discussion, put something up there that people can discuss. We'll relax that a little bit with job posting. If the jobs are relevant, let that up because LinkedIn started to monetize the job section of the site. Okay, what else can I say? Yeah, building membership. So once you've got your name and you've set up a profile, how do you get people involved? You have to invite people. And I started off just with my LinkedIn contacts. You then look at your CRM system, try and find email lists. You can email people through LinkedIn and get them to join. And then the other way that I'm looking at now is inviting people from other groups. And my only mechanism that I found of doing that is you can send them messages if you're in a group that they're in, and you can say, please join our group, which is quite a useful thing to do. What I tend to do though is try to connect to them, and then put in the message that just connect to them, and then we'll send out messages, or you can send messages to them in the connection message. Once you exhaust those channels, and you will exhaust them relatively quickly, well, you can keep on going depending on how many groups you're in, is that you've got to look for other ways to engage people. I mean, the South African Recruiters Group, 1,700 members, that's a small fraction of the recruitment community in South Africa. So, there's an awful lot more people out there that are on LinkedIn, but we haven't found them because they're not group active people. What next? Then you have to create conversations, particularly when you're starting the group. We created debates and discussions and things that were of interest to create activity on the group. Having a big group is of no benefit if it's not active. It's much better to have a small group that's very active and people engagement. So you need to build up a critical mass of people that can have a conversation. It's like throwing a party in your house and only 2 people turn up. It's not much of a party. They may be very interesting people. You may have interesting conversations, but you're going to have an awful lot of quiet time. If you have a critical mass of people, a lot of people are going to hang around and listen to it, and you'll have people that are just actively talking and sharing information. So you can create conversation. You can also actively engage people that you think are going to be interesting. So invite people that are bloggers, invite people that can talk. Look for feeds. We haven't done this in South African Recruiters Group, but you can get blog feeds going straight there. I think it looks a bit too obvious, and it doesn't create a lot of discussion, so I haven't bothered doing that. The other thing as a manager is you have to keep the thing tidy. So we spend quite a bit of time just looking at what's going on, moving things around to promotion sections, whatever else, keeping the membership tidy. There is a bit of an overhead in doing that. It usually takes me about 15 minutes a day to look to see who's joining it and what the discussions are. So there's a bit of activity there, but if I wasn't engaged in it, then it wouldn't be useful for me to do it. So it's part of the work and the overhead about keeping up to speed. And then finally, this is the thing that I think is most important with community building, is do other stuff. Both the South African Recruiters Group and the Irish Recruiters Group are not purely virtual communities. We do an awful lot of physical events. In the Irish Recruiters Group, they have an annual conference, and they have bi-monthly meetups, and now we're going to do quarterly meetups in Belfast, which I'm organising, and we'll have 20 or 30 people coming along and talking, and then we'll go for a beer afterwards. In the South African Recruiters Group, we were even lazier than that, because after we started up, we just said, we're going to be in this bar. Anybody who's interested, come along. People came along expecting somebody who'd be talking about recruitment. We said, no, you just go to the bar and buy a drink. We're just hanging out. We sat in a group of people and talked about recruitment, and it was brilliant. It was a really interesting way to meet people and to socialize and just be aware of what was going on in the industry. And of course, if you meet somebody physically, then you're much more inclined to connect with them virtually through the internet. So it was really important to do that. But you can think of all the other things you could be doing in the group, whether it be physical events, whether it be virtual events, whether it be any of a number of other things that you can use a group for. You don't need to be the group manager to do this. Anybody, I mean, as I did with the Irish Recruiters Group, which I don't manage, I put a message out to people, 20 or 30 people I was connected to, saying, I want to try and get some kick-started in this group in Belfast. I'm going to be in this bar at this time if anybody's interested, come along. And we had, I think, half a dozen people came along to it. Everybody said, yeah, we want to try and kick off a decent recruitment community in Belfast, and then it's grown from there. So there's all sorts of exciting things that can be done there. Okay, that's about it for me. I'm just looking at the messages that have been coming in, and I've been told that there is a similar group to Refresh Belfast in South Africa. I don't know what it's called. Thanks very much, Julia. Before I go, there's one other thing I want to mention, which is, I said at the start, we're organising a conference, a social recruiting conference in November in Cape Town and in Sandton. 9th of November for Sandton, 11th of November in Cape Town. The website for it is www.truesa.coza. I'm absolutely delighted that earlier on this week, ABSO, who have been really helpful and supportive of it, want to be more helpful and more supportive, and we're now going to have them as co-organisers for the event, which is absolutely brilliant. So what I'd really encourage people to do is to check out the website, truesa.coza, and get involved in that. Buy some tickets, come along. There is a bit of a cost to it, but that's because we're having to fly people into the country and obviously host the venues. Hopefully it's not that expensive. And for a whole day of conversation, we're going to have 18 to 24 discussion topics plus more. So it'll be an intense, exciting, exhilarating learning day for everybody involved. It's going to be small groups of people splitting off and doing stuff like this, talking about whatever you want to talk about, all the leading edge technologies, all the leading edge ideas, how to recruit better, more effectively and smarter. Wonderful. Anyway, that's it for today. This video and the other videos in this series are going to be posted on our blog page. Check those out. Next week, I'm going to do another webinar on really try and link together sourcing with engaging candidates. So we've talked a lot about sourcing using the likes of LinkedIn and Facebook and other sites. Going to mention a little bit on that because there's some stuff we've missed and we haven't been comprehensive. And then I'm really going to talk about how do you engage people, how do you get to the stage from simply knowing their name to actually engaging with them and communicating with them on how that process is going to work so you can actually roll it forward from identifying an individual into making the placement. Should be an interesting one. I'm not too sure exactly how it's going to pan out at this moment in time, but I'll have worked it out by next week. So look forward to speaking to everybody then. The connections to that will be on the blog page, intel-sw.com/blog.php. That's all from me. Thanks very much for your attention today, and I look forward to speaking to you all next week.